My name's Blair Thomas, and I'm a puppeteer.
Time don't make it no pleasure without pain, no love without heartbreak, respect.
I'm working in this capacity with the Looking Glass Theater Company, and they have a new play called Mr. and Mrs. Pennyworth. I'm making the puppets for the show, so I'm the puppet designer. This is a position that I haven't done so much, so to make puppets for someone else's show is something I don't do too often, but I have to say it's a great relief to only work on the puppets and not have to worry about the rest of the show. So what it allows me to do is to indulge in design and the execution of design in a way that I actually don't let myself do on my own shows because I'm so preoccupied with so many parts of the show. After college, I came to Chicago to work as a director in the Actors Theater. I thought I would be a director for the regional theater. And I, after about 4 or 5 years, became a little disillusioned with that and had an opportunity to make an original piece, and I went back to puppetry in my late 20s. And so for the past 30 years, I've been making puppet shows in Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. I grew up in Alabama, but I moved to Chicago after graduating from Oberlin College in Ohio. And I worked and lived in Chicago for 20 years or more. And then about 7 years ago, my wife and my family, we moved here to southeastern Wisconsin. And that affords me this studio barn to work in.
But you know your desire, don't hold a glass over the flame, don't let your heart grow cold. I will call you by name.
But I still work in Chicago, so my work, that's where it happens. This is the second edition of the Chicago International Puppet Theater Festival, and this show, Mr. and Mrs. Pennyworth, is one of 20 performances that are happening as part of the festival. My other role is that I'm the founder and artistic director of the festival, and so I'm organizing the whole of the festival, and it's a collaboration. We have 25 different Chicago non-for-profit organizations who are helping us present these artists and these companies. We have companies coming from Korea and from France and the Netherlands and Canada, as well as Chicago and the other parts of the United States. And so this production is one of them.
We tried so hard to live in the truth, but do not tell.
Often what happens with contemporary puppetry when people who are interested in the arts come and see it for the first time is they say, I've never seen anything like that in my life. Because what's happening in contemporary puppetry is live in front of you, mixing styles and mediums and aesthetics that is wholly new in its collection. And it's a very dynamic form it's not puppetry solely for children at all. Although there are several performances in the festival that are for children and young audiences. But it's a very dynamic art form. Chicago has a pretty vibrant puppetry scene for the United States. New York has more, clearly, but we are a city that's really poised to host such an event as this festival because we have a huge indigenous theater audience, not a tourist theater audience. People who live in Chicago and the area love to go to see live theater, and so likewise, it's a broad-minded audience, and so we've had a very positive response to the festival. The first year, we had over 14,000 people came to see performances during the 10 days. The festival is happening at a variety of places. We're presenting works at the Victory Gardens Theater, at the Museum of Contemporary Art, at the Looking Glass Theater, at Lynx Hall, at the Neo-Futurarium, Beverly Arts Center, Columbia College Dance Center, and as well as we're touring some stuff throughout the Chicago Park District, Adventure Stage, Chicago Children's Theater. There's several institutions that are participating. If you haven't been going to the puppet theater since you were a kid, you would be in for a great surprise by coming to see productions like this one, that Mr. and Mrs. Pennyworth, where there's different scales of puppetry that are being employed. There's, I have very normal-sized puppet dolls that are being used, but also larger, and there's a large costume puppet that's, in the end, it's about 10 or 12 feet long. It's a very large puppet. And then Manual Cinema is also presenting shadow puppetry in this show as well. So there's that, it's a whole nother dimension. And shadow puppetry is like, it's a visual theater that cannot be accomplished in the cinema. And so it's a very astounding kind of technique, and they're experts at it. So what ends up happening is you have this live aesthetic that's a storytelling technique that really is transportative. You're in a space you're in the presence of the puppet, and the puppet, as an adult, you look at it and you go, I know that's not alive. But if the puppet has been well designed and is being well performed, you start to be deceived because you say, oh, I recognize that movement. In fact, oh, that looks very much like the movement of a wolf, and oh, that looks like the movement of a small figure, and you believe for a second, and then you're like, no, I don't believe, and then you believe, and then you don't believe, and you don't believe, and you go back and forth like this, and then you start to become entranced by the performance. And this is one of the phenomena of puppetry that works an audience today.